I got a question to ask you. Is there a person in your life that is very persistent? The most persistent person in my life has got to be Blake. Blake is always good about if there is something that he wants, he is going to keep asking and asking. And not only asking, he's going to think of more creative ways to do it. Okay? So the pickup that he's got, he asked us last summer if he could buy that pickup. And we're like, no. That thing is loud, it's big, it's ugly, it's going to cost too much in tires. We told him everything. And he's like, well, Dad, I'll have another diesel, so if we ever got to pull 2 trailers, we're able to do it. Still no, Blake. I mean, and then he'll come up with something else. You know, I would be able to haul things down to the fair, Dad, that you wouldn't have to. No, Blake, you know. So, I mean, he is just, and especially if there's something that he really wants, he's very persistent. Yeah, exactly. That was the other thing that he did too. So I was just about to add that, babe. But anyways, is there someone persistent in your life?
My Evangeline's very persistent.
There was 3 thumbs pointed at you. Did you?
I mean, it is a quality most children share.
Yeah. I don't, you know, it's not always a bad thing to be persistent, you know. All right. So we're talking about as children. Can you ever remember a time when you were a child that you were so persistent with your parents that there was something that you wanted? Zeke, you're nodding your head yes.
Always asking for more. So she obliged.
And it was a genetic trait inherited too. Yeah, so. And we all know persistency pays off because, well, Eric got Sharon eventually after 60 years, you know, or whatever it was, you know, so when they dated in high school and then finally back now, so. On the flip side, has a friend ever asked you for something so boldly or in a way that you could never refuse? So I had this friend. He moved 5 times in college. And not only did he do that, he had an oversized king-side bed and a jacuzzi that had to move at every time that we moved. And Craig never lived downstairs. And for some reason, whenever Craig would ask me for help, I would always just say yes. I mean, I love the guy. He still is a great friend. Talked to him last night. He's up there in Milton Free Water. I was worried about the fires and stuff with him. But he would ask me, and I would drop everything. I'd even take a day off work to go help him. And I think we all kind of have that friend. No matter what, we would go help. Anybody else have that type of friend? Any stories? I was going to say, none that incriminate. We don't want to do that since we're on video. So. Yeah. And on the flip side, I know like several of the men in here, Brian included, we don't always like to ask for help, you know. But there's always that friend, no matter what, that will drop everything and come help you. I can think of a time that I was asking Mr. Johnson about electricity and how to hook up an outlet and everything else for the outdoors for the Traeger. He was there in about a half a day with all the supplies and came and put a new outlet on the outside of our house. And I didn't even ask him, you know, and it was one of those things I was just wanting a little knowledge, but I think he knew I was colorblind and he didn't want me to catch the house on fire, so.
I can echo that for Eric as well.
We probably all have that Eric story.
It's just easier to sometimes just to do it for them instead of telling them how to do it.
What
they say?
They're complimenting you, Eric. They are, they're actually.
That's probably why you don't
Somebody
understand
rewind.
it. You're quite like compliments. This is weird.
He said their grateful our house never burnt down.
So I want to ask a deeper question. Have you ever almost given up praying about something that you prayed for a while? I think we all have. There's all been those prayers that we pray every night that sometimes we think about giving up, but we don't. So with that, I want you guys to turn to Luke 11. And we'll read 5 through 8. Actually, Kevin, why don't you just go ahead and read 5 through 8.
He said to them, which of you who has a friend will go to him at midnight and say to him, friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has arrived on a journey, and I have nothing to set before him. And he will answer from within, do not bother me, the door is now shut, and my children are with me in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything. I tell you, though he will not get up and give him anything because he is his friend, yet because of his impudence, he will rise and give him whatever he needs.
Any words or phrases that stick out to you in this?
I got a story that'll fit this perfectly. Years ago, where I used to go to church, there was a young man. He's married to a very nice lady. He had a couple of kids. And he's very persistent. He's one of triplets. And I was scared to ever meet the other 2. But he called me up New Year's night, not New Year's Eve, New Year's night. And I'd been in bed for an hour. And he called me up about 11 o'clock at night. He had to be at work at 5 in the morning out at the paper mill. He was a commercial painter. And he wanted to make sure the alarm clock was going to go off. But the plug-in was all screwed up next to his bed. That was a nice home, so there were 2 other plug-ins, maybe 3 in that bedroom. So I got over there and I ran over to my dad's. He was still up. Got a bunch of electrical stuff, ran over to his place, and whoever had cut the wire in the box cut it too short. And when they tried to fix it, you couldn't get a receptacle in there at all. So I suggested extension cord. Nope, he didn't want an extension cord. And so I said, well, if you put the alarm clock on the other side of the bed, no, it's got to be here. Everything had to be right there. So finally, his very nice wife, about midnight, finally said to him, he said, Dean, Eric is going home. And I will wake you up at 5. Anyhow, he was that way with everything. But I mean, I was sound asleep when he called. So.
You know, as I was preparing for this, you know, immediately that stood out to me is the time, you know. And it makes me think a lot about, well, I immediately thought of Brian Graham, I'll just say it, because there's pages that we'll get at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning or at midnight, and maybe it's even on a holiday, you know. And there's times, you know, you guys know I'm deaf in the right ear, and I lay my left head on the pillow, and I can't hear the pager go off, you know. And then finally when I come to, you can hear on the other end of the radio, and Brian says I'm 1023, which means he's already on scene. You know what I mean? And it just makes me think of Brian. No matter what's going on, he's going to show up, you know. And I know in my life, sometimes I haven't showed up, you know. So that's what really sticks out to me in this one was thinking about Brian. So,
I was thinking, something that stood out to me in this story, I don't know if it has before, this guy wasn't even just asking food for himself. Another person showed up and asked him, so he's going and asking him. So he needs help to help somebody else.
And that stood out to me too. I mean, you've seen it where people come to my office or call me and they need help for somebody else, but do I have a number of somebody to get to somebody?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it happens all the time. What emotions do you guys hear in this story?
Urgency.
Urgency.
Desperation, almost, like they're like, I need this.
He needs those 3 loaves of bread for his friend. You know, so he was desperate for it. He went to another man in the middle of the night. I get it. That's a good one, Z.
Either resignation or irritation from the buddy he goes to.
Yeah.
I like that. Irritation.
Now, he responds to irritation over friendship.
Out of either one of these guys, is there a character you relate to the most? Bill?
I didn't ask for help. It was offered to me. And tomorrow is going to be the first day of my 47th year without a drink.
Oh, wow.
Good job. That is awesome, Bill.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So do you ever find yourself being the one asking for the bread or getting up in the middle of the night to give the bread? I feel like I'm on both sides of this one. You know, I don't ask very much, you know, but when I do, I know people are always there. But I find myself wanting to be that person always, to give that bread at night, you know. There's a lot of times when even my wife goes, well, why are you going there now? Or why are you doing this? You know, Larry is not here today, so I'll pick it on him. And he's like, how do you have the energy to go help these people? And it's like, what else are you going to do? Sit at home watching Netflix? I mean, you just find yourself doing that sometimes. Does anybody else feel that way? Think you all need a little bit more coffee or maybe an energy drink this morning? Mountain Dew.
This must have been a really hard and fast custom. If he went over at midnight to his friends to get bread to feed somebody that just showed up.
Did you read my notes?
No.
The very next line is, hospitality was a sacred responsibility in the Jewish culture. You know, we don't see that hospitality always, you know. We tend to think that we're, you know, hospitable and we'll invite people over to our house and welcome them in, but the Jewish culture, I mean, they would take neighbors and strangers and wanderers and travelers in and give them the best that they had. I mean, it was, like you said, sacred. Go ahead, Adam.
I think that was just something that was indicative of the just most ancient cultures. Because if you read the Iliad or Odyssey, like somebody shows up and they should give them everything they have. It's wild.
Yeah.
Something that's completely foreign to us today as we just look at taking care of ourselves. But even if you go back here 100 years ago, like somebody shows up, they would have food, they would be fed, taken care of, and they'd be on the way the next day. You know, reading stories from the pioneer days and things like that. You know, it's just American culture has shifted so much in the last 50, 80 years. It's something that's foreign to us today.
I completely agree. And it's too bad sometimes that we're like that, you know. Sometimes we're very welcoming in one scene, you know, when maybe, you know, let's just say it, maybe we're very welcoming here in church, but do we always welcome somebody to our home? Do we always, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, kind of to what Adam was saying, in ancient Near East culture, honor and shame was like the big thing. You know, you want to honor others, otherwise, you know, you're bringing shame upon yourself, and that was huge for them. Elise and I were just saying, it reminds me of story in Genesis 18 when the three visitors come to visit Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham sees them and immediately jumps up and tells Sarah, hey, get some food going, and what he's asking for is like, for a huge meal, and it's a long process. Everything comes to a standstill is about these people that he didn't even know.
And you know how long it takes to make bread. I mean, with yeast and sourdough, so giving away 3 loaves.
Slaughter the calf and all this. Yeah.
I can imagine you walking out of the house with 3 loaves. She may get a dirty look. But we're talking about shame, and we were just talking about a funny story. We had some people over Friday, and they were talking about their grandson that was driving them from McCall, and he heard the page on the fire on the Indian Valley one, and he said he pulled right up to the fire because he knew he was going to fight it, and Grandpa was going to drive home. But he said he just dropped his drawers right there on the side of the road. He didn't feel any shame at all to put on his fire pants, And it was just like, shame's not really in our culture anymore. It really isn't. Whether it's our modesty and how we dress or how we treat people, people just don't feel shame like they did back then.
I have to wonder, with our culture shifting to be more, self-sufficient and not needing to help, are we as happy as they were 100 years ago? Because I think when someone is a servant helping others, that's when that person is really content and happy. If you watch people, and I had a pastor some years ago in another church, and we were helping each other, and he said, you know what I noticed? I noticed that people are really happy when they're serving others. And because our focus is off of ourselves, the things that we need and want, and we're meeting the needs of others. And there's a satisfaction that comes with that doesn't come with anything else.
It's so true. JD, we were just talking about shame and how this culture doesn't feel shame anymore. And I noticed you wore a Cowboys jersey in here, so I don't want to point that out. But anyways, Paul, but to what you were just saying, people asked how I could teach VBS this week. How could you be with those little kids? Don't you need time to mourn? Are you too tired to do so? Boy, it energized me serving those little kids. It's a little worn out at the end, and I'll talk about it at the table today. There were some questions I don't know how to talk to or answer, some of the things the kids did, but it did. It brought me pure happiness. And even got scared one morning. I came out of my office and she was standing right there. She goes, boo.
He doesn't like that.
But Heather pointed out, when we talk about midnight, it emphasizes the urgency, the inconvenience to help others sometimes, and the emotions that this person may have felt. The neighbor eventually responds because of his persistence, or maybe even of his boldness in asking. But it wasn't just out of friendship alone. Jesus argues from the lesser to the greater. If the neighbor responds, how much more will God? Why didn't the man simply wait until morning?
He had a duty.
He had a duty. He probably felt that same sense of responsibility that he had guests in his homes, that he had to treat them so well that he had no shame in going to ask somebody else for 3 loaves of bread. I mean, we can always think of excuses. I mean, what the neighbor say? What was some of the excuses the neighbor gave?
His children are in bed.
It's children, yeah. I don't know how many times I've used my children's excuse that I have to leave because I'm thinking about my bedtime and I'm like, oh, I got to get the kids to bed, but it's me, We use children's excuses all the time, I mean, so did this man. What risk did this man take by continually to knock at the door to get to that man that he knew that was probably asleep.
Rejection.
Rejection. There may have been some humiliation.
Yes.
People seeing him from the other houses. There may have been a chance at a loss of friendship later on, knowing how close they were, an argument, maybe a confrontation. I mean, there's so many things that this man may have risked at that time.
Yeah, I was just thinking that this guy asking, he's willing to be humiliated and look the way he does in order to care for his guest that has come, you know. So it's him putting himself last while he's putting somebody else first. Of course, he is putting the other guy out too. But yeah, if you show up in Idaho at midnight and bang on the door, you might not make it out of there.
Yeah. Might be someone with a shotgun on you.
Yeah.
I mean, as a realtor, I've faced it a lot, you know, the chance at humiliation. You know, a client all of a sudden decides to back out of a deal or ask for something that's like, you know, there's things like that. And so you got to go back to the other realtor and, you know, I won't ever blame the client. I'll just say, hey, this kind of changed, and, you know, be humiliated and just press it upon me. But, I mean, there's things in life we do that all the time. You know, we'll bear the brunt of a little humiliation just to help somebody out. What does the persistence of this man reveal about what he truly believes?
He knows his friend is gonna help. I mean, you're not going there thinking your friend's not going to help.
And he had a responsibility. He took upon himself. His friend came to him in need. And he took that responsibility upon himself, just like the Samaritan that met the guy beat up on the road. He took that responsibility upon himself, took him to the end, and had him taken care of. And here we see this, a friend came to him in need, and he didn't have it. And so it's like, hey, okay, now it's my responsibility. I gotta go get help.
I completely agree with what you guys are saying, but I looked at this in a different way. I mean, how many times in our life have we made excuses to ourselves to not even to go knock on that door? Not even to go ask that neighbor for something. I mean, how many times we just don't think about it, you know? I've done this several times, you know, clients like, you know, I want to do this. All we got to do is ask. I mean, the worst they can do is tell us no. And sometimes we worry so much about that no that we don't even ask. And that's what immediately drew me to this. And I'm glad you guys brought that up, because that's how I felt. I think how many times in my life that I haven't even asked because it was something for myself, because I knew the answer would be no, or I don't deserve it, or something to that. But for that person over there, I'll go pound on anybody's door, you know. There is a lot of Bible verses that ask about the persistence in prayer, isn't there? I mean, just here are some right here. Luke 18, 1 through 8, the persistent widow. Genesis 18, 22 through 33, Abraham interceding for Sodom. 1 Samuel 1, Hannah's faithful prayer. James 5, 16 through 18, Elijah's prayer prayed earnestly. I mean, that's just a handful of them. Those prayers that we've persistently prayed and threw up and threw up and threw up to God, and just wanted just to hear. And we just kept persistently praying. You know, if we compare to a child knocking on a loving father's bedroom door, a good father doesn't ignore his child because of an annoyance. Sometimes he answers those prayers immediately. Sometimes he waits because he knows what's best. So I ask this again. Why do we stop praying too soon? Doubt?
I think you give up,
Give up?
because our timing is different than God's timing. So we give up.
I think we all know that.
Well, we take it as an answer of no, since he hasn't come through.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that's not necessarily true, it's just not yet, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
like she was saying, or maybe he doesn't really care,
Yeah.
about
We're in a culture, generation, whatever you want to see, that results are immediately, unfortunately. I mean, go ahead, Paul.
I have to, have to think in our prayer, in our asking God, are we desperate enough? As we read through the Psalms, he cried out with God in desperation. And one day when the light came on, is there in Montana. I was up in the shop working, and Almanzo, our son, was down the road lane a little bit, and all of a sudden I heard this, "Dad!" I mean, just a desperate, "Dad!" And I looked, and here was the neighbor's dog jumping up on him, biting him. His voice and the scene, something rose up within me. I took down off of there. I was going to tear that dog to pieces by hand. I didn't get a chance to get close. The dog up and left. But I had to think of that. What if he would have just stood there? "Hey, Dad, I need your help." My response would have probably been, "Well, when you get desperate enough, serious enough, I'll come and help you." I think it's the same way with us in our crying out to God. David, when he cried out to God in, was it 18 or 19? I mean, the heavens shook. I mean, God woke up. He heard his cry. And I mean, he completely destroyed his enemies because he heard the desperate cry. We were like, well, if God doesn't answer, I'm going to do this, and I got this option, I got that option. But is our prayer, our cry to God in desperation to where it catches God's attention? Like Almanzo, his desperation was, it caught my attention immediately. Or another example is, house is on fire. We wake up in the middle of the night, the house is on fire. What would happen if we get up and say, "Hey, guys, the house is on fire. We should get out"? They'd be like, "Oh, what?" But if you fire, boy, boom, everybody's awakened. I think it's the same way in our prayer with God.
We agree.
Yeah, I think some of that probably comes from us not knowing exactly what we're doing is praying in God's will, which would be like with Paul's story at Alonzo, or Alonzo, I'm sorry. When he yelled for his dad, he 100% knew his dad would want to be there to take care of him. He wasn't calling thinking his dad would ignore the dog that was attacking him. He called because he knew he needed help, and his dad's will, his dad's desire would be to save him from that. And so I think it points us towards needing to be in step with God's will for our lives. Like when it says faith can move, mountains, well, that's because if our faith is in line with what God wants to do, nothing could stop God. So that mountain's going to be moved if that's what His will is. So if we're praying in His will, it's going to come. It's going to happen. And so I think the big key is to be in His will, be in His walking in how He wants us to walk. Because if we're living in opposition, or if our prayers are in opposition to God's desires, that's not going to work.
And as you're saying that too, it makes me think about me as a father. One of my sons asking me, "I'm hungry." "Well, do you want something to eat?" "I don't know. I'm hungry." well, what do you want to eat? But is that our prayer life too? Do we ask God specifically? Do we know what we want in our prayers? And I think that's the trouble too, is, as us as, dads that try to do the same thing that our Father does. We don't even know what we want sometimes, so how is He supposed to help us? And to what you were saying, how He yelled, Dad, that urgency and that and everything else. Kevin and I had so many conversations during our men's Bible study when we were going through the Psalms. And how they prayed in the Psalms. It's unbelievable. What they asked for specifically. How they were almost yelling at God, and telling Him what to do. And I remember asking Kevin, I'm like, Kevin, how can you be that arrogant to go to God and pray like that? To demand Him to bring an army down or whatever. And sometimes we need to pray like that. We need God in our lives, and we need Him there. Now we need to temper it, like in the end of every one of the Psalms where they talk about how great God is and everything else, and not demand Him or trick Him into something, But at the same time, we've got to pray like they did in the Psalms, specifically. And as we're talking about prayers where He's answered them, I can think about the time the Paddocks fire. Brian was on the complete other side of the canyon than I was, and I had very limited radio reception with Brian, and a whole crew was over there, and we had an old crew on the other side. And all I could hear on that radio was, "It's gonna burn over us." And boy, I got out of the pickup, and I got on my knees, and I started praying. These are my friends. These are family. Called Kevin. We need prayer right now. We need it right now. 10 minutes later, the biggest, blackest storm cloud that you'd ever seen went right over the top of Brian and rained probably a half-inch rain and put that whole fire out. But that's what it took. It took me getting on my knees. It took me calling Kevin. Hey, God, we could use a little help.
What did I tell you after it burned over us?
Yeah. Brian wouldn't probably be here today if we didn't do that type of prayer.
I believe in God now. He just showed up.
How does persistence build our faith?
Like habits, the more you do it, the more often you do it, the more likely when you encounter a situation when you need it, that's what you're going to run to.
Yeah.
Hearing Zeke's voice makes me think of working out at the gym. I don't know why I think of that with him, but anyway, it's kind of like training spiritual muscles, The more you do it, you get into a habit of it, and then you're looking for it, and you're seeing it, you're seeing the need for it, just builds those spiritual muscles.
That was one of my examples in here, and I started to say it, but we're results, oriented culture, or generation, or whatever you want to say. And we all go, whew, I ate 4 pieces of lettuce today. Look at me in the mirror already. No. It's not the way it is. You have to go to the gym. Zeke's the same way. Zeke's been going to the gym hard for 2 or 3 years. And Zeke's lost all that weight. And apparently he's not the strongest person in here because he couldn't break the rope during VBS. But
I have pictures.
I was not breaking that rule.
yeah, it was a good analogy for the kids, so I appreciate it. But but it does. It takes that persistence of years and years of going to the gym, and not just going, but putting in the work and trying a little bit more. And then before you know it, those results come. But you had to have the faith to keep going to the gym. And that's the way our prayers are. We have to keep going to God. We have to keep asking. And what we may be asking, Zeke may have been asking to get stronger. Well, God wasn't giving it to him. God, help me to go up to 285 on bench, 4 sets of 10. It may have been one of those where we had to keep praying, but praying a different way for a different, the same result, but in a different way. And we need to do that in our lives as well. What prayer will you continue to keep bringing before God? Is there prayers that you keep bringing before God that aren't answered? That you've thought about quitting on? This is probably one of the most difficult ones for me. Mine was always for Wes to be healed. I asked Kevin on Wednesday, what do I do at night now? Do I still keep praying for him? Do I keep praying for my son? And he said, no matter what is on your heart, that's what God put there to keep praying. Sorry, you did your makeup, babe. I'm sorry. But no, never stop praying. Never stop, no matter what. Keep praying. Keep praying with the same persistence as the man knocking on that door. Kevin, can you go ahead and finish on Luke 11, 9 through 13?
Yeah. And I tell you, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, it will be opened. What father among you, if his son asks for a fish, will instead of a fish give a serpent? Or if he asks for an egg, will give him a scorpion? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Heavenly Father, give the Holy Spirit to those who ask him?
Our Father is not reluctant. He is a loving Father who delights in giving us good gifts. Persistent prayer is not about convincing God to care. It's about demonstrating what we believe He has already done for us. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.